Yeah, I tend to agree. Anyways, add to stream. The Fauci Gazy. Let's see what he has to say.
How concerning is the outbreak in China? We see the lockdown in Shanghai, and the State Department now ordering families out, all non-essential workers out of Shanghai.
Well, China has a number of problems, two of which are that their complete lockdown, which was their approach, a strictest lockdown that you'd never be able to implement in the United States, although that prevents the spread of infection. And remember, early on, they were saying, and I think accurately, that they were doing better than almost anybody else. But lockdown has its consequences. You use lockdowns to get people vaccinated so that when you open up, you won't have a surge of infections because you're dealing with an immunologically naive population to the virus because they've not really been exposed because of the lockdown. The problem is that the vaccines that they've been using are not nearly as effective as the vaccines that are used in the United States, the UK, EU, and other places. To get people vaccinated so that that they were doing better than almost anybody else. But lockdown has its consequences. You use lockdowns to get people vaccinated so that
you use lockdowns to get people vaccinated. And by the way, I'll get to whether or not he misspoke. It's not the first time this carrot and stick had been floated. I forget which doctor it was earlier that said, if you open up, there's going to be no incentive for people to get vaccinated. This was the doctor. She was the doctor on CNN. If you open up, if you let people go back to work, where's the coercion to compel them to get vaccinated? So anybody, and I'll get to people who think that Fauci misspoke. He didn't. He did not misspeak.
But lockdown has its consequences. You use lockdowns to get people vaccinated so that when you open up, you won't have a surge of infections. Because
so I just said, in my mind, in my view, in my humble opinion, this is not a legal opinion, it's mine. What Fauci, and I didn't actually type his name, I didn't make the typo on purpose, but it kind of looks good because it's a fitting typo. What Fauci just admitted as policy is criminal extortion. Do you imagine this thing? We're going to lock you in your home until you submit to a medical procedure. It is criminal extortion. It's arguably battery. And it is what they're doing. It's not. It was not a typo. It was not a misspeak. But I just want to bring. There was one response that I remember what it said. I might not be able to find it, but show more replies. There was one person who said it accused me of a disingenuous take. This may come as a shock to you, but no, it's not criminal extortion. You know what? I can't find the actual. Let's just go here. Criminal extortion Canada. Let's go to criminal extortion Canada. Criminal code. Here we go. Extortion. Everyone commits extortion. Listen to this. We'll agree to disagree for anyone who thinks that this might not be. And admittedly, it's intended to be slightly hyperbolic until you actually know what the definition of extortion is. Everyone commits extortion who, without reasonable justification or excuse, and with the intent to obtain anything by threats, accusation, menaces, or violence, induces or attempts to induce any person, whether or not he is the person threatened, accused, or menaced, or to whom violence is shown, to do anything or to cause anything to be done. Now, I don't think it would pass in a court of law. That might be for other reasons, but let's just read that again. Extortion. Everyone commits extortion who, without reasonable justification or excuse, and with intent to obtain anything by threats, accusations, menaces, or violence, induces or attempts to induce any person, whether or not he is the person threatened, accused, or menaced, or to whom violence is shown, to do anything or cause anything to be done. I think the definition fits quite clearly. You're going into lockdown. unless you do something to your body. I think without reasonable justification. I don't think there's a reasonable justification for a curfew or for locking people in their homes or for shutting them out of their businesses. And it is without justification or excuse, and with the intent to obtain anything. Hold on, let's just go do something else. Let's do another poll. How do we do this? I go create a poll. Does it qualify as extortion? Yes, and turtles. Turtlers, no, and turtlers. I'm doing the typo. Ask your community. Let's see. Anyhow, so that's it. It may surprise me. Yeah, it's a pretty close call based on that definition of criminal extortion. Okay, that was Fauci. Would it be possible treason if the PM signed a treaty that took away or limited our Bill of Rights? Treason? I don't think so. Treason, I think you have to be in a time of war, declared war. That word gets thrown around more often than it should. Do you believe that the story of Exodus is actually true? Looking into it, it never happened. We have thousands of years of Egyptian history. Thoughts? I don't know. I'm not a person to say. I went to Egypt once upon a time. Saw the pyramids. There's who I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. You don't even know what happened last week, let alone 3,000 years ago before documentation. But I had never thought to question the occurrence, but maybe perhaps the accuracy or the hyperbole of what happens to stories as they get passed from one generation to the next. Hold on, I'm going to cough. Let the jokes begin. I did flag one comment that I want to bring up. Can we see this? Yeah. Wow. Naive to think you advance in private sector due to merit and productivity. LMAO must never have worked for a corporation. So just JC. Again, I don't know if this is a troll or not, but I'll assume that this is a legit, like a sincere question. I didn't say that individuals succeed in the private sector due to merit. What I said is that the private sector as a product thrives on merit. So an individual within a company might not make its way to the top based on the merit of that individual, but the company, if it's a crap company, will probably go BK sooner than later. I meant the company succeeds on merit. Not necessarily every individual gets what they deserve within that company. And to your other question, must never have worked for a corporation. I, as a matter of fact, worked for Borden Ladner Gervais for 6 years, biggest law firm in Canada. I worked for Martin Swiss Cycles, where I sold bikes and did maintenance. I worked for Sports Expert, where I sold shoes. These are all summer jobs. I worked for Black's Camping, for anybody who remembers that blast from the past in Montreal. I worked for another bike shop, La Cordée. I worked as a rock climbing instructor at a program that I developed at the Y Country Camp. I worked for Lester's Smoked Meat one summer, packing smoked meat. I worked for a fabric company one summer, rolling fabric. I had the 3 to 11 o'clock shift and occasionally had the 11 to 7 shift. So yeah, I've worked for big corporations, and I've also started my own small law firm, which we worked up to 5 lawyers and a paralegal. And so I know what goes into starting a small business and the pain in the neck that comes along with all of the red tape for operating a business within Quebec and Canada. So yeah, just JC, I hope that answers your question. Okay, I saw that already. So one more here. No, I got that one too. When you are being called a criminal by a criminal, what do you do? But the bigger question is this: when one criminal says another individual is a criminal, what do you do then? When one authoritarian dictator calls another authoritarian dictator an authoritarian dictator, which authoritarian dictator do you believe? Okay. Working against your country's interests is treason. Anyhow, I stay away from that particular accusation, but I understand the sentiment.